there a need for adjustment to final account? Sometimes what happens is that due to a clerical mistake or an accounting mistake, some principles might have been skipped, or some entries would not have been correctly recorded. Now, at the end of the year, it becomes necessary that we depict or we present the true financial position of the firm in the annual report. So, for correcting all these entries, we pass certain adjustment entries. Now, adjustments are required so that our assets, liabilities, our profit, they are actually giving us the correct values, correct representation of the financial position of the firm, and all the principles, concepts that we did in unit 1, they are properly followed. And like in the second point, it is given that your prudence principle, which says that we need to create reserve for anticipated losses, provision for anticipated losses, all these rules should be followed. So at the end of the year, we might have to pass certain adjustment entries. So if there are any corrections in the existing balances which were given in the trial balance, then outside the trial balance, you might find additional information which is related to passing of adjustments. So we will take up the adjustments one by one. Please pay attention. We start with closing stock. So more or less by default, closing stock has already been covered in the question that we have solved. So outside the trial balance, when you find an additional piece of information, it comes at a minimum, or the effect of that information is recorded at a minimum of two places. However, the entries in the trial balance, they come at a single place. So now closing stock is mostly 99% cases, it is given outside the trial balance, which means you need to record it at two places. Those two places are: one, the trading account. So in the trading account, on the credit side of the trading account, you record the amount of closing stock. Also, as already told, the closing stock of the current year becomes the opening stock of the next year. So we record the closing stock at another place, which is the balance sheet. And in the balance sheet, we record this on the asset side of the balance sheet, because this stock will now lead to revenue generation in the next. Also, you can have a different uh, language to the adjustment of closing stock, like it is given here. Cost of unsold goods at the end of the year is rupees 12,000, having a market value of 15,000. Now, in final accounts or in accounts in general sense, we follow the rule of prudence, which says anticipate all losses but do not anticipate any profits. So we play it very safe in accounts. We make provisions for expected losses, but we never record the profits unless and until they are earned. So the rule for stock is that it is valued at cost or market price, whichever is lower. तो अब अगर आपको कॉस्ट प्राइस 12,000 दी है, मार्केट प्राइस 15,000 दी है, तो क्लोजिंग स्टॉक आपका रिकॉर्ड होगा एट रुपीज 12,000. So lower of the cost price or market price. Yes, Jatin, you have a doubt. You raised hand.
No, ma'am.
Okay, just be careful with your keypads. Okay, so we record closing stock at two places: trading account debit side, balance sheet asset side, but we record it at the lower of the cost price or the market price. That is how the adjustment entry for closing stock is done. So here you are also given the adjustment entry. Now in final accounts, since you are preparing accounts, if need to write down the entry, then it is very easy. आपका trading account एक proper account है with debit side and credit side. So left hand side is the debit side, right hand side is the credit side. Now यहाँ पर buy closing stock की entry आती है on the credit side. It is the last entry. Now if you are asked कि इसके basis पर आपको journal entry pass करनी है, तो first thing what do you see? Trading account is credited by closing stock. So this means जो भी जर्नल एंट्री होगी उसमें जो क्रेडिट अकाउंट है दैट इज द ट्रेडिंग अकाउंट. So credit we don't write, but here to specify I'm writing, which means now the debit account is closing account. Closing account debit to trading account. This is the adjustment entry. Moving ahead, we come to some additional points here. If the amount of closing stock is appearing in the trial balance. Now, very rarely in any question will you find that closing stock is not given in the additional information. It is directly given in the trial balance. This means the adjustment is not required. The processing of this information has already been done, and trial balance entries they come at only one place. So now this closing stock will be recorded in the balance sheet under the asset side only. Information outside trial balance will be recorded at two places. So this we have seen practically also. So I'll quickly move to the next adjustment, important adjustment, outstanding expenses or unpaid expenses. So let's discuss this at length. So in accounts, we follow the accrual concept. Can anyone tell me what the accrual concept was? If you can recall, any one of you? Or should I ask? No one?
It is basically
Yes, Manav.
expenses and revenue are recorded when the payment is received. So,
When the payment is received, तो
When
फिर
the order is received, order is delivered or received.
okay, so when the order is
Ma'am,
delivered, yes, Aditya.
ma'am, we record a transaction on the date of the transaction, not when the cash is received or given.
Okay, so date would not be the correct term to use here. Now I'll just give you a proper definition of the concept. Accrual concept says expenses are recorded not when they are paid, but when they are incurred. and incomes are recorded not when they are received but when they are realized. तो अब जो आप बोल रहे थे कि जब डिलीवरी होगी गुड्स की तब आपने ओनरशिप पास ऑन करी है ऑफ द गुड्स टू द बायर, देन यू रिकॉर्ड द इनकम इन स्पाइट of whether or not you have received cash against that. For expenses, again, when you have incurred, when the expenses have become due, they are recorded. We do not see whether that expense has been paid in cash or not. If related to the current financial year, it will be recorded in the accounts of the current financial year. So, very simply speaking, अगर कोई expense आपने पे कर दिया है, वो माइनस होता है या वो इधर डेबिट साइड पर जाता है, डिपेंडिंग ऑन whether it is a direct or an indirect expense. It will appear on the debit side of trading account if it is a direct expense, and if it is an indirect expense, it appears on the debit side of P&L account. Same is the case for incomes. If you have direct income, that is sales, it is recorded on the credit side of the trading account. And then if you have any other indirect income, then it will be recorded on the credit side of the P&L account. So everything is good to go when we have expenses and incomes in cash. Now, when the payment has not been made or when some payment has been made in advance, then how does the accrual concept come into the picture? Now there can be two cases under expenses. One is outstanding expenses and the second is prepaid expenses. So let's first understand with respect to expenses the adjustment for accrued, sorry, for yes, outstanding expenses or accrued expenses. Now, at the end of the year, you are preparing the final accounts and you find that the rent for March, say 2021 has not been paid. Okay, so now this rent is unpaid till the last day of the financial year 2021. How do you treat this adjustment? Again, this information will be given as additional information, so we take the effect at two places. What I do is that under the P&L account, because rent is an indirect expense, it will appear in the P&L account. तो अगर 11 months का rent pay हुआ है, तो जो कि आपका से rent 11 months का 11,000 paid है और अब at the end of the year you find that the 12th month rent has not been paid. This outstanding rent is actually part of the expenses of the current year. So now I add this outstanding rent to the rent paid, and total rent debited in P&L account for the entire financial year will be 12,000. तो अब मार्च का रेंट करंट जो भी फाइनेंशियल ईयर चल रहा है उसमें आएगा. अगर आपने पे नहीं भी करा तो वो उसी फाइनेंशियल रिस्पेक्टिव फाइनेंशियल ईयर में रिकॉर्ड होगा. We are not seeing whether cash outflow has taken place or not. So the first recording or first effect of this adjustment is here, that we add the amount of outstanding expense on the debit side of P&L account. Then in the balance sheet comes the second effect of this entry. So balance sheet, you have the liability side, you have the asset side. Now you have an expense which is due but has not been paid. So this is a liability for the business. Now this is a current liability for the business because it will anyways need to be paid. It needs to be paid in the next financial year. So within a period of 1 year, you need to pay this rent. So this will appear as an it will appear as a liability in the balance sheet, but now very carefully we write only the amount of rent due, क्योंकि बाकी तो पे हो गया, उसका जो इम्पैक्ट आना था नेट प्रॉफिट या लॉस में आ चुका है। अब ये जो 1,000 रुपए हैं, ये जो अनपेड रेंट है, ये एक तरीके का डेट है फर्म के लिए दैट नीड्स टू बी पेड इन द नेक्स्ट फाइनेंशियल ईयर. So in my balance sheet, this will appear as a liability, outstanding liability of rupees 1,000, and this becomes the second impact of this adjustment. So first have a look at this. If you are clear with this, then I'll move to the next adjustment. Is this clear? Any doubt? Outstanding expenses are added in the P&L account on the debit side, and outstanding expenses appear in the balance sheet under the liabilities side.
क्लियर मैम.
ओके, सो व्हाट आई विल डू इज, क्योंकि आउटस्टैंडिंग की ही बात हो रही है तो मैं इनकम भी लेती हूँ इसी कॉन्टेक्स्ट में. अब उसको हम आउटस्टैंडिंग इनकम नहीं बोलते, वहां पर हम टर्म बोलते हैं इनकम ड्यू बट नॉट रिसीव्ड और accrued income. So this is income that is due for the current year for the business, but this has not been received. So say rent yet to be received for the business. Now this rent was to be received by the business. So again, I'm taking the same value, and now we see how this impacts the incomes and of the current year. So again, two places, this is additional information, so this appears at two places. P&L अकाउंट इनडायरेक्ट इनकम है, रेंट जो फर्म ने रिसीव करना है, से एक्स्ट्रा बिल्डिंग थी, फैक्ट्री में एक्स्ट्रा स्पेस थी जो हमने रेंट पे दी हुई थी, उसका 11 मंथ्स का रेंट आ गया. लास्ट मंथ मार्च का रेंट अभी हमने रिसीव नहीं करा. So let's see how we record this entry. So we move to the credit side of the P&L account because this is an income for the business by rent. Now this working I am showing in the inner column. 11,000 का रेंट हम रिसीव कर चुके हैं. अब जो रेंट अक्रूड है, अक्रूड रेंट, this 1,000 will be added. तो जो भी आउटस्टैंडिंग एक्सपेंस है या अक्रूड इनकम है, क्योंकि करंट ईयर से रिलेटेड है, this will be added, and now the final amount that appears on the credit side is 12,000. So this is the first impact of this adjustment on the credit side of the P&L account. Let's move to the second impact. Now firm का जो रेंट है वो अभी फर्म रिसीव करेगी, अभी करंट फाइनेंशियल ईयर में नहीं आया. So the firm will receive this amount in the next financial year. So this is a income that will come to the firm or cash that will come to the firm. So in any case, this is not a liability for the business. This is actually an asset for the business. Because इसका जो monetary benefit है वो firm को आएगा in the next financial year. तो ये आपका accrued rent will appear on the balance on the asset side of the balance sheet in form of current asset of rupees 1000, and this is the second impact of this adjustment entry. So you have to see the nature of the information given. Now, if it is an expense, that to indirect P&L के डेबिट साइड पे, इनकम है इनडायरेक्ट तो P&L के क्रेडिट साइड पर. उसके बाद आपने क्या देखना है कि कितनी अमाउंट आउटस्टैंडिंग है, उतनी स्पेसिफिक अमाउंट जो आउटस्टैंडिंग एक्सपेंस की है वो लायबिलिटी साइड पे जाएगी और जो अक्रूड इनकम की है वो बैलेंस शीट में क्रेडिट सॉरी राइट हैंड साइड एसेट साइड पर जाएगी. Are both these adjustments clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what I do is let's move to the second aspect. अब ये यहाँ पर हमने जो outstanding part है उसकी बात करी है. Now I will talk about same under the accrual concept. Two more things. One, when you have any prepaid expense, and two, when you have any income received in advance. Okay, so let's start with case of prepaid expense. तो प्रीपेड एक्सपेंस का मतलब क्या है? वो एक्सपेंस जो आपने एडवांस में पे कर दिया है, तो उससे आपका फाइनेंशियल ईयर स्टार्ट हो रहा है 1 अप्रैल 21 से, एंड currently this financial year ends on 31st March 2022, the current financial year. Now, between the year, it was felt that for this business, we need to take an insurance policy. The insurance policy was purchased on 1/1/22. Now, the expenditure on policy, or what we incur as an expense every year on insurance, is known as premium. And premium is in most of the cases paid for 1 year. तो जो आपने पॉलिसी ली 1 जनवरी 2022 को, उसका जो प्रीमियम पे किया है और उसका जो इंश्योरेंस कवर है, दैट विल बी वैलिड टिल 31st December 2022. Now what I find here is that in this year, जो मैंने इंश्योरेंस मुझे कवर मिलेगा वो 3 मंथ्स का मिलेगा, और मैंने नेक्स्ट ईयर के 9 मंथ्स के लिए एडवांस इंश्योरेंस प्रीमियम पे कर दिया है. I repeat the example. The premium is paid on 1st January, which means current year only 3 months of insurance coverage is available. The remaining 9 months of premium are for the next financial year. तो अब जब मैं फाइनल अकाउंट्स बना रही हूँ till 31st March, how will I treat this advance payment? Again, will come on two sides. So one place will be the P&L account, and second place will be the balance sheet. Now, in the profit and loss account से सिंपली लेते हैं कि हर ईयर जो इंश्योरेंस हम प्रीमियम पे कर रहे हैं वो 12,000 है। तो अब पीएनएल अकाउंट के डेबिट साइड पर जाएंगे क्योंकि एक्सपेंस है। आपने जो लास्ट ईयर की इन जो आपने इस ईयर जो इंश्योरेंस पे करा है दैट इंश्योरेंस विल कम ऑन द डेबिट साइड एंड दिस अमाउंट has been recorded as 12,000 rupees. Now it is only 3,000 that belongs to the current year. So I will be reducing the amount of prepaid insurance, and now in the outside column, the final amount of insurance premium will come to 3,000. First impact of this adjustment is in the P&L account, you reduce the amount of expense by the prepayment that has been done. So finally, इस year का expense ही दिखेगा P&L account में. That is the objective of all adjustments. Now, next impact will be in balance sheet. अब आप मुझे सोच के बताओ, is this 9,000 that has been paid in advance a liability for the business or asset for the business? It is asset for the business क्योंकि ये 9,000 का फायदा आपको आने वाले फाइनेंशियल ईयर में होगा। ये पेमेंट आप कर चुके हो, अब कोई आपके एंड पे कुछ उधार नहीं है। आपको इसका फायदा, इसका जो इकोनॉमिक बेनिफिट है दैट यू विल फाइंड in the next financial year. So now in the balance sheet, the asset will be prepaid insurance and the amount will be 9,000. This is the second impact of this adjustment. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now we move to the last case of adjustment under the accrual concept, income received in advance for the firm. So, okay, let's take the rent example again. So, rent received on 1st January 2022 for 1 year. And for simplicity, I'm taking the same amount, 12,000. So the firm is receiving advance payment of rent for 1 year, 12,000 on 1st January 2022. We already know that 3 months rent is for the current financial year and remaining 9,000 is for next financial year. So this is a case of income received in advance. Two impacts, one in the P&L account. This is an indirect income for the firm. We move to the credit side. वहां पर by rent received अमाउंट आएगी 12,000 पर इस ईयर की अमाउंट सिर्फ 3,000 है। तो अब जो इनकम रिसीव्ड या रेंट रिसीव्ड इन एडवांस, ये 3,000 आप यहाँ से माइनस करोगे और जो आउटर कॉलम होगा पीएनएल अकाउंट का वहां पर आपकी अमाउंट आएगी 9,000. This is the first impact of this adjustment. Rent received in advance. Okay, now to see the second impact, I come to the balance sheet. I have the liability side, I have the asset side. Now this rent, if you have received in advance, it means now the firm is liable to give, just Dhruv, let me complete and then I'll come to you. So if the rent has been received in advance for 9 months, इसका मतलब है कि अगले फाइनेंशियल ईयर में जो फर्म की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है टू रेंडर सर्विस अगेंस्ट दिस 9,000 रिसीव्ड, इसका मतलब आने वाले ईयर में 9 मंथ्स के लिए आप ये प्रेमाइसिस किसी और को रेंट पर नहीं दे सकते. दैट इज द ऑब्लिगेशन ऑफ द बिजनेस. So any obligation is a liability for the business, and hence rent received in advance. So 9,000 की amount है that will come on the liabilities side of the balance sheet. This is the second impact of this adjustment. So now, yes, Dhruv, you had a question.
यस मैम, ये मैम P&L में रेंट रिसीव इन एडवांस में आपने 3,000 माइनस कर दिया, 9,000 होना चाहिए.
9,000 होगा. हाँ जी, ठीक है बेटा, ये यहाँ पे मैंने कर दिया. तो दिस अमाउंट इज, पर बेटा इसमें अच्छा हाँ, मैंने 9,000 करना है, मैंने यहाँ पे. Okay, so the advance amount needs to be reduced in the P&L account on the credit side, and this advance amount will appear as a liability under the liabilities side of the balance sheet. Okay, so I hope that these entries related to accrual concept are clear to everyone. Any doubt in any of the 4 adjustments that we have done? No doubt?
नो मैम.
No, ma'am.
Okay, so I'll stop here then. These 4 adjustments, just revise